My name is Mika Morenyan, and this is my Pecha Kucha speech on the history of the carronade. The carronade is a close cousin of the cannon. However, the carronade was a short-range, extremely powerful anti-crew and anti-ship weapon that found use in the 1770s and was used in conventional warfare until the 1850s. It began as a merchant weapon used to fend off and destroy enemy pirates and privateers during the American Revolution. The earlier models were smoothbore, meaning they had no internal grooves to promote accuracy and distance. Made from cast iron, the carronade was designed to be lighter, wider, and more versatile than its cousin, the cannon. This made it extremely appealing to smaller vessels that needed utility and power while still keeping weight down, giving the best of both worlds. The carronade was also built on a mounting, allowing for more recoil, bringing in the era of the carronade by creating a demand and a market for the product. The largest carronades ever conceived by the British Navy were able to shoot round shot that was 64 pounds. The way to operate one of these carronades is by cleaning out the bore, going and getting shot and powder, stuffing that down the bore, and then firing. In reality, carronades on British vessels only required 2 people to operate. It was first cast by Carron Company in Stirlingshire, Scotland, at the company's ironworks, shipping the gun, mounting, and shot all together. Designed by British officer Robert Melvin, he began producing it at his foundry in Stirlingshire. It was first used off the coast of Ile-de-Baz, off the coast of Brussels near Brittany, France. A French enemy captain lay struck and wounded. He ordered the colors of surrender to fly after one broadside from the British HMS Rainbow devastated his vessel, solidifying carronade's use as a military asset in naval engagements. Eventually, the British Navy armed the HMS Glatton with 54 large carronades, enabling it to cause more destruction via broadside than the first-rate flagship HMS Victory. Carronades even larger than these were found on the HMS Glatton and were eventually put to use by the Royal Navy. Due to England's success as a nation and its industrialized ways, it was able to generate these carronades 20 years prior to any other industrialized nations, arguably being the reason behind Admiral Nelson's success during the Napoleonic Wars. They were able to do this because of England's advances in smithing, casting, and forging. These guns had an impressive power-to-weight ratio. A 34-pound carronade weighed less than a ton, while a 34-pound cannon weighed over 3 tons. This allowed many to be put into the top decks of ships as powerful and lighter replacements, allowing for heavier ordnance to be used on the lower decks of these ships. Very strangely, however, these guns were not considered actual guns on ships, meaning a 38-gun frigate was a ship with 38 cannons and 10 carronades, meaning in reality there were 48 pieces of ordnance on the ship, creating a misleading and deadly misunderstanding of these and most British ships. Not only did these guns change the ideas of conventional warfare, they changed and forced countless nations to increase firepower and develop new types of rugged ammunition used in crudely based designs to help benefit the objective of the weapon, sometimes going so far as firing bags containing 300 balls of musket shot to create a deadly and devastating effect. As stated in the book The Naval Gunner, the chief witness of the carronade was its lack of range. Carronades were employed at point-blank range, which meant 450 yards for a 64-pounder and 230 yards for a 32-pounder. If the fighting was at longer range, the carronade was a liability. He called for the conscription of 1,500 Indiaman trade ships, massive trading vessels with an equally large amount of guns. Holding 54 guns, these ships were considered fourth rate of the line. The carronade eventually had designs developed that allowed for a wider range of shifting angles, essential to be able to fire while retreating. Merchant vessels will always run. In the case of Indiamen, slowly destroying their enemies on the run rather than face them directly. However, if enemies did get close, it would be a big mistake for them, as many flagships carry 100 if not 140 guns, not including carronades. This meant that many of Admiral Nelson's Indiamen trade ships could be used for military purposes, as well as abusing their technological advances to exploit wealth from India and many other colonies. It was this idea of free trade that fueled Britain's class-based ignorance with the rest of the world and forced its innovations to be everywhere. Their navy was so powerful because of innovations like the carronade, and because of this, they could be anywhere. They surely used this newfound naval strength to surpass all other industrialized nations economically, leading to Britain's sense of pride, considering itself an empire, resulting in the multitude of territories that it once held. Due to the massive amount of trade available to Britain, it used its newfound economic pinpoint of the carronade and sold it to other countries. From this, other countries were able to buy ordnance weapons directly from the people that they would be fighting. The carronade brought up concerns around ballistic windage, presenting concerns on how muzzle velocity can affect the accuracy of a shot. Windage is the amount of space inside the internal firing chamber. This made manufacturers compete on how little windage their carronades could have over one another. As the carronade continued to develop, the French Navy was the first to experiment with explosive-packed cannonballs, known today as shells, pioneering what would become modern-day ordnance. Continuing to work with the explosive shot, the French began to test these shells out of newly developed carronades, designed specifically for lobbing these explosive shells. These would become the first howitzers. The destructive effects of exploding shells against hulls was much more appealing to French captains. They even began developing quicklime shot, a chemical shell that blinded and burned enemies upon explosion. Technology continued to increase, and with the use of such devastating munitions, the carronade became a stepping stone in the history and design of artillery, falling more to use as weaponry for second-hand merchant and military vessels, never again considered a serious asset in military engagements. It would be innovations like more reactive gunpowders and higher quality steel and iron that would make the carronade irrelevant. The carronade was a major stepping stone in ballistic ordnance, from its design and creation to its lack of use in military that left such a major mark on the world of ordnance. The carronade helped develop a culture of implementation within simple designs to generate devastating effects that would eventually change the face of the world. I'm Mika Amaranian. Thanks for listening.